Well, hello everybody. Welcome to a new episode of our show, Tawheed, Spiritual Unity of the Three Principles. Today is a really special day, as this is the last episode of our season, really, and we are lucky enough to end it with a good company. And our guest today is Dr. Dicken Bettinger. I'm sure most of you know who Dicken is. If you don't, and you know about the three principles, for me, it's like knowing about tennis and not knowing Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal. You should know about Dr. Dicken Bettinger because he is one of the first people who start sharing this understanding along Mr. Banks, Sydney Banks, and George Pransky, and all the other first amazing people who shared this understanding with everyone, really. So I'll just, for those who doesn't know who Dicken is, well, Dicken received his doctorate in counseling psychology and has worked during his career as a licensed clinical psychologist, retired. In 1986, he met Sydney Banks and feels fortunate that for 26 years he had the chance to learn directly from him. He has co-founded one of the first three principles training, counseling, and education centers. And in 2012, Dicken founded his private practice, Three Principles Mentoring, where he offers 4-day immersion retreats for individual practitioner development and advanced training programs. Dicken is the co-author of a book called Coming Home, in covering the foundations of psychological well-being. And he has been happily married for 51 years, and he has 2 adult children and 4 adult grandchildren. If I missed anything, please let me know, Dicken. So it's really nice to have you here. And my first experience with Mr. Dicken was like, I went to a seminar of his in London back in 2018. This is the first time I met Dicken, and it was such a beautiful time, well spent. The simplicity that Dicken shares from is absolutely amazing. Like, he never fails to bring me back to our innate health, our innate resilience, really. And he was one of the first people I've checked on YouTube when I came across this understanding. And it was just like the way he talks about these three principles understanding is so simple and demystifying, so it's easy for everyone to grasp. And so we are so lucky to have you here with us, Dicken. And so before I give it to you, I'll pass it over to Harry to say a few words, and then give it to you.
Yeah, a few words. Yeah. Great to see you guys. This is our farewell, last show of the first season of a, to be honest, a season where I was not sure what was exactly happening and whether I would want to continue. But the quality, Dicken, of the shows, each show, I mean, it unbelievable. Every show was, and it's different. It had a flavor and it was teaching me and entertaining me. And so I couldn't deny that. And also to watch Omar's development and growth within that. It really was heart-rendering to see that. So we started, Dicken, about a year ago, almost to the early July, and it was just a simple Omar interviewed me type of thing. And then some of the highlights in the last year, Christine Heath was our first guest, and she talked about diversity from a 3P perspective. And you know what a big change that was to the three principles. In fact, I would say it's the biggest change I have experienced. For 3 years before that, I was talking nonstop about that, but everybody said, don't be so negative. But once that came in through Christine, and that it opened it up, of course, to Omar and Evalu, because of that, they were given an opportunity to show their levels of consciousness, their wisdom, not just, the establishment. So that was a very neat show. And then after Christmas, all the shows were good. It was slow moving, seemed to attract 3P people who were interested in the Muslim religion rather than the Muslim community. But as we kept venturing out in the new year, which is January, we had Marina come on, a woman with, as you know, great feelings and so on. And then Omar did his one show that he created, which was Derek Mason and Omar Wilson from Beyond Recovery. And they were fantastic. And within that, yeah, we had group discussions, and the group discussions were really alive and so on. But then we had a show that really meant a lot to me personally. And that show was when Mamoun Yosef and Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt came on together. And in that togetherness symbolized a lot what Omar and I represent. Omar is a 26-year-old Muslim from Casablanca.
27 now, Harry.
Oh, excuse me, such an old man. Oh my God. As I wrote to Omar, if I'm ever that old, I'm going to just shoot myself, type of thing.
You wished me a happy birthday yesterday, so you should remember this, Harry.
Yeah, and I'm a 74-year-old, almost 75-year-old Jew, and it symbolizes something because Omar and I have never talked about religion, we've just found that spirit together. It supersedes everything like that. But Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt said something that really knocked my socks off. And it perhaps was the most important statement of our whole show, of our whole season. He said, if there is racism, you've taken God out of the equation. And it just seemed to answer everything for me. That particular issue is such a sensitive one, especially right now with what we're experiencing. But once you include universal mind in the discussion, it changes the whole composition. So you might want to deal with that, but that's up to you. So I'm just going to, and then my favorite show was the last show we had, where we had a panel which included 5 or 6 Muslim women, mostly from the Back to the Fitra Mentoring Academy in Australia with Catherine Jones, which is probably the largest Muslim influence in the 3P world. And we formed a bond, and I brought in Krista Kamsel as well to complement it. And it was a panel not telling people what to do, Dicken. It was to examine what we were doing good and not so good type of thing from that perspective. And it was beautiful. But the combination of the 3P Muslim community coming together, to me, was a pinnacle point. And 2 other pinnacle points that I'd like to bring up is, first, inviting Omar to talk at the 3P UK conference. That really made my heart sing, really made me feel good. And to show that the strength of what that did, he came back different. He was, more backbone, more strength, more knew who he was. And now he's going to be talking at the 3-day Muslim conference, 3P Muslim conference with the Back to the Fitra Mentoring Academy conferences. I don't know what it's called. And he's the only guy talking there. They're all women, 25 women and Omar talking. But again, to see the 2 organizations, them and us, coming together in a gentle way, that is really, really a strong feeling. And another milestone, like our community, this show has influenced and helped people, but it's been slowly evolving rather than like the addiction, alcoholism, and 3 principle exploded. So I have 1,500 downloads a month in that one. We hit a milestone in May, 151 downloads from our shows.
Mhm.
It's a nice, that's the highest we've hit. And it really pleased me. It's slow, it's evolving, but it's penetrating and so on. So with that, I just want to say to everyone, it's been a great year, and we're looking forward to season 2, which will start in September. I want to give you 3 words, Dicken, just to help you with what they mean and so on. So Tahid is the name of our show. It means one with God or spiritual unity. No idols, just God.
Oneness. Yeah.
Oneness. Okay. Another word that's really that has really influenced me is fitra. Back to the fitra. Fitra is what we would innate conditioning or innate wisdom. So the back to the fitra, Fitrah. I know you love words, so
It's the space within.
the space within type of stuff. And the other one, when Catherine and her academy, they go up. Oh, on our show, by the way, from the panel was from Nigeria, Pakistan, Australia, England, Canada, and Morocco, of course, type of thing. So we had quite a cross section, and so when Catherine was talking about presenting all over the world, and she does it all over virtual reality rather than in person, they don't call it mind, they call it guided by Allah. Very similar to what Elsie says, mentored by mind, guided by Allah, because they can relate to that more than they can relate to the mind. So that's my teaching. And now I'm going to just one last second, guys. I've in my latest book, Evolution of Addiction Recovery, Reopen, I deliberately kept all the people from 3P out of it, except Bill Pettit, because he had some scientific stuff. But I heard Dicken say one thing, and I just had to include it in the book. I loved it. So I put his name in the book. I've deliberately kept other people out. It's my voice, Dicken. That's what I wanted to share, not what 3P has done. That book 1 needed that. I needed the support. But once you know yourself, then you see people break free of that need, and they're on their own, trusting their own instincts. So I want to read from my book, not my book, actually, what Sydney Banks said to Dicken, which to me is extremely profound. And I would like you to start your conversation in that direction from this quote, if you wouldn't mind. And just give me a second here. Dicken Bettinger, a distinguished 3P elder. I didn't know what to call you, Dicken, so I thought I'd give you that indigenous title.
The old fart.
I almost put that in, but then I said, oh no, then they'll think I'm part of that club, so I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So, excuse me. Yeah. So I used a distinguished 3P elder and old fart once wrote to me saying, Sydney Banks called me up and kept repeating over and over, you have to take people beyond the psychological to the spiritual. It was like each time he said it, he was holding my hand and walking me deeper and deeper into the spiritual realm. That teaching planted a deep seed that just kept growing and growing. It was the message from Sydney that I will most remember. It has had the greatest influence in my life and in my sharing. And with that, Dicken, the show is yours.
Well, thank you, Harry and Omar. I just want to say I love what you've been up to and the way it's impacting people. I really honor and respect your interest in seeing the human race as the world community, and you're bringing the unity back into the community. And it does make a difference. And it's a not only important, but necessary voice to bring spirit back into the equation. Otherwise, we get as a individually and as a larger community, we get out of balance in our egos. And when humans get out of balance, everything around them gets out of balance. So it's nice to come back and find that deeper unity, that deeper balance. You know, it was powerful to be in Sid's presence. And you got a much better understanding of why Sid would always say, don't listen to my words. Don't get caught up in the ideas and words. We have to, if we want to discover our true nature, our spiritual nature, there's only one way. We have to go beyond all the words, all the ideas, all the beliefs, all the concepts. And it's powerful being in Sid's presence because he was so rooted in spirit, so deeply present, that it was like a tuning fork effect. You have two tuning forks and one of them's vibrating at a certain frequency and the other one starts to vibrate at that exact frequency. People were affected by his presence. And it seemed like one of two things would happen when people around Sid. Either they'd realize how absolutely speedy their personal mind is. I mean, I thought of myself as a pretty calm person. I'd be around Sid and I felt like I was just a frenetic, you know, a real frenetic person because of the depth and beauty of his presence. You know, we get a little glimpse of that when we hold the newborn baby and look into their eyes. And that's what struck me about Sid when I first met him, was not what he was saying, but his eyes, the depth of his presence. Your eyes are the windows to your soul. And so people would either become aware of how absolutely speedy their thinking was, or they would drop in his presence, would drop out of that world of ideas, beliefs, concepts, out of the psychological world into this space within Fitra, is it? The space within the wisdom space, the heart space. People would drop into that space. And it's a whole nother world. It's ordinary, but it's beautiful. Absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And it's our birthright. And then all of our ideas about what spirituality is and what it means to be spiritual, when you go beyond all those words, there is an experiential recognition of what's true, our true self. And it does something for people. That's evident in the 33 years since I met Sid Banks and sharing this understanding, watching people drop into this space within and always and inevitably experience greater connection with anything that's around you. So it's an unconditional love. If I'm outside in the woods and I'm caught up in my thinking, I won't experience beauty. And when I wake up out of that thinking and fall deeply into what Sid called pure consciousness, awareness free of the contamination of the human mind, of our conceptual mind, of our intellect. When that happens, everywhere I look, I see beauty. Right? If I'm around my wife, if I'm in my head, I may not feel close to her. I fall out of my head. Why? Sometimes this space is called the universal heart, not the personal heart. Our soul, connection, beauty, senses come alive so we can experience beauty and experience gratitude. We feel that connection with closeness to life. So Sid says it's a journey of love that starts in love and it ends in pure love. Pure is a word Sid used for beyond the intellect, uncontaminated by limited ideas, judgments, shoulds, dislikes. Pure thought or divine thought, pure mind, divine mind, pure consciousness, divine consciousness, he says, is love. Now, the experience of that is absolutely beautiful. And I want people not only to, because sometimes people fall in love, but they don't know that that's their true nature or that that's our connection to that which is the unity of all life, this infinite spiritual energy of which we are all danced into existence and are intimately a part of. Intimately a part of. Not two different things connected. It's the intimacy of a wave to the ocean. The wave can innocently believe that it's a teeny little wave on the surface of life, and you look around and you see all these other big waves and you can feel insecure. Sid Banks just kept coming along and saying, look within, look down, little wave, Dicken ego, look down. You're no different than any other wave. You are the ocean. You are the oneness. Don't take my word for it. He'd say over and over again, you look, you listen quietly and see if this deeper dimension, this other world that's intimately at one with our psychological world, our physical world, see if you don't begin to experientially realize through insight our connection to something greater, and see what that does for you, as it has done for thousands and thousands of people throughout time. So it says, if you start to understand the principles better, if you start to understand the spiritual power of thought is what's creating our experience, you'll keep waking up from holding on to thinking that is creating tension, stress, or upset. How practical can you get? You get to be unburdened by the thinking that burdens you and drop out of that hold, that thinking, that apparent reality. You get to drop into the space of presence, characterized. Sometimes Sid would call that, when we let go of all those judgments, he'd talk about forgiveness a lot. David Banks says Sid talked about forgiveness, the present moment, and deeper feeling all the time. So the principles help us wake up out of thinking that burdens us, that's forgiveness. We drop into this space of presence, Some people call it the freedom space because it's free of judgment, free of shoulds. No wonder our senses come alive in pure consciousness. After I had COVID, I was given a gift by the divine, by the universe, of 4 days without a lot of personal thinking. And I walked around like a newborn baby after 2.5 weeks of being in unending pain. All of a sudden it went away and there was just quiet. So Sid says, if you want to discover truth or the spiritual dimension of life, it's always, always found in silence, which means silence from the noise of our babbling thought system. It's found in silence and a feeling. Sometimes you say it's found in the state of no thought and the feeling of love, because we start having deeper feelings of connection, which is actually experientially recognizing the truth that we are connected, whether we know it or not. There is an intimacy already in our oneness. An intimacy in our true self, which allows us to come home to the space in which intimacy is the language and currency and truth of that space. Coming home. I've worked with people. I've had the fortune of working with people from all walks of life, all cultures, all backgrounds. And we all think, and at times we get caught up in thought that's creating tension, stress, and upset. And if we haven't realized the spiritual nature of the principles as the source of creating this feeling, innocently we start blaming that feeling on the world. I feel bad because of what this person said to me. I feel bad because of the weather. I feel bad because of, and the list becomes endless. And psychology before Sid Banks had so many theories about where experience came from, and everybody had a different theory. There were no principles in psychology. Psychologists would say, well, what you're experiencing right now is created because of your past. So they would blame the past. Or they'd say it's because of your personality. Freud says our personality is set in stone at the age of 3. So we could blame my personality as that's why I feel the way I do. You can blame your parents as how I was raised. You can blame your genetics. You can blame your DNA. You can blame your biochemistry. That's why I have these feelings. You can blame circumstance. You can blame people. You can blame the weather. You can blame the food you're eating. You can say all of those things at times are the source of my experience. And Sid says, none of those are true. Psychology has not had principles, so they haven't known the true source. The true source, that which has the power to create. Cars don't have the power to create feelings in people. What somebody says to you doesn't somehow have this creative gift to bring your feeling to life. Doesn't have that power. People don't. Nothing in the physical world that's already been created has the power to create. So as it said, there's one source to all human experience. And the essential characteristics of this infinite formless energy, of which we are waves dancing on the ocean of, has three qualities that are universal. It's wise, intelligent, because it knows how to create from nothing into something. Everything that we see around us was created by the Great Spirit. Everything is created by this intelligent energy. Even the physicists are starting to acknowledge this and saying everything that exists within the quantum field, the matrix in which things occur, the context, the universal subjectivity out of which objects arise. And they say that field of formless energy is full of intelligence because it knows how to create subatomic particles and then bigger and bigger particles and then systems, and knows how to operate all of that. In other words, we're being lived at this moment. Something is breathing us, beating our hearts, generating mental activity in our mind, in our brains. Something is living those things right now. Could you imagine if the universe says, okay, you think you run the show? Okay, you're now running your pancreas. Your pancreas won't work unless you operate it. You're going to have to beat your own heart, breathe your own body, bring every cell to life and keep it living. We are being lived. Indigenous people have been proclaiming that forever, and mystics have been proclaiming that throughout the centuries. We are being lived by a formless source. And it's intelligent because it knows how to create. For example, each of us started with no cells, then 2 cells, then a party, and then more and more cells, and then all of a sudden you get hair, and then you get skin, and you get lungs, and you get all the, and then they are intelligent enough to work together. I love that notion too, that part of this wisdom is that it knows how to guide what's created toward well-being, guided by Allah, mentored by mind, that when any human being gets quiet, they just start knowing what to do and how to do it without having to run it through their intellect or figure it out or even understand it intellectually. So we call that common sense. It's wise. It wouldn't be called wisdom throughout the ages if it didn't know what it was doing and guide us toward well-being. So Sid would say, when we get out of the way, we fall into harmony with the universal force and power of wisdom. And when we're in harmony with the principles, when we're in harmony with the principles, it does guide us toward living beautiful lives, loving lives.
Can I ask a question? One of the most interesting statements Sid has said, and you've answered it, but I'd like to hear it a little. He continually talked, on this thought to alcoholism, talk, he continually talked that the answer was changing thought. And he specifically said, I don't mean choosing an apple versus an orange. He says, you can do that, I know that. But, and you have actually answered the question of
Yeah.
healing and the spiritual connection to that. But could you address that just for me?
Yeah, I'll give a go at it. And, you know, when Sid would talk to us about we can change our minds, our egos got very excited and said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to change my mind. Oh, it's just thought, so I'm going to drop it and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to have new thinking. And he could see how we were still bound by ego. And so one time, and this is another aspect of Sid, he had such a great sense of humor. And a bunch of us are sitting around, it was nothing formal. We're sitting around with Sid, and he did one of his Sid things. He just suddenly said, I'd like to share with you what I think is the most important thing any human being can learn. It's like a fisherman putting a big worm and tossing it right in front of our noses, and we're going, oh my God, he's going to tell us how to change our mind. Oh, we've waited. He's going to share the most important thing he thinks a human being can learn. Oh, our egos got so excited, we're going to figure this one out after all. And then he said, oh, there's only one problem with changing your mind. You can't do it with your little mind. Only big mind can do it. I think everybody in that room had the rug pulled out from under their ego, and they had a glimpse of how if you wake up to the fact of thought, wisdom knows how to bring you back to the now. He said, if you really see thought, it will bring you back to the now. You put your hand on the hot stove, it's not your ego intellect figuring out how to take your hand off the stove. Wisdom goes, whoa, that's not healthy. If you really see that it's your thought creating your insecurity, like happened for Sid, it threw him back into the now. So Sid also would say, if you really see the principles, it will bring you to a meditative state. It'll bring you back to the now. It'll bring you back to happiness. Wisdom knows how to do perfectly well everything we're trying to do. So I used to try and quiet my mind down. I used to try and let go. All this trying, and we'd say, Sid, I'm trying to get quiet. And every time we'd say trying, he knew we were doing it with our intellect. He'd go, oh, no, there is no trying. When you put your hand on the hot stove and it hurts, when you realize where the pain is coming from, it's not a trying or effortful thing. It's just a natural wisdom response. So I'm with my wife. I'm starting to feel bothered by what she's saying or doing, and I don't see it. And then at a certain point, all of a sudden, I realize the feeling wakes me up. Oh my God, I'm caught in thought. And I step back metaphorically, or wisdom throws me back. This is mentored by mind, throws me back. I let go of the thoughts that are creating my tension, my upset. And then there's a moment of quiet. And in that openness, this deeper intelligence of wisdom brings new and fresh feeling and new and fresh thinking. So when Sid talked about the beautiful thing is that human beings can over and again wake up out of conditioned thinking that creates tension, stress, and upset, and fall wide open to wisdom. So stress becomes a reminder and call to wisdom. It's not a curse. It's not a problem. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's an alarm going off to wake us up to the now, bring us home, and then we get new thinking that replaces the old. So Sid would say, you're looking for new and fresh. And he wasn't speaking to our egos. He said, I'm not talking to your personalities. I'm talking to wisdom itself in you, reminding you of what's true. So this notion, Harry, at least for me, it makes a difference whether you think I have to change my mind, or if I just am open, wisdom will change my mind always in a way that's wisest. And I can never know. I can never outsmart the wisdom of the universe. I can never, that's why it's called ego, is the arrogance of I can do a better job at this than God can. That's how I've been thinking about it of late, Harry.
Beautiful. That's gorgeous. Very cool. I use the word intuitive. It's just intuitive.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's intuition. I just recently learned, all the great in words like insight and insight and intuition and inspiration, and that we drop metaphorically within inside to the spiritual. Metaphorically, we drop into the spiritual, the formless presence, what's always there that doesn't come and go. And then we are tutored, taught.
Right.
That's the root of the word tuition.
That's
We are
cool.
taught or
That's
mentored
exactly like
by
that.
mind.
Yeah, that's so dead on. That's exactly how it works.
Intuition.
Yeah.
So we start living intuitively rather than what should I do? Should I say something? Should I not say something? And we struggle with trying to figure out how to live in the world and how to respond. Right? Someone Joe posted instinct. Right? We begin to live based in wisdom rather than ego or the intellect. Right? We become instinctual in the good sense of the term. I watch flowers know how to move and turn toward the sun, and they know how to turn light, photosynthesize it into energy for its own growth. Now we're learning trees know how to do that too, and they then take that sugar and they can send it through the roots and the mycelium under the forest floor. They can send it through the wood wide web to other trees who are failing and in need. They can share their energy, sugar energy, that compassion, that knowing. But so flowers are moved by this intelligence. I watch the birds. I have a feeder in front of my window and I watch birds all day long, and they just know when to land, when to be looking around, when to eat, when to stay, and when to fly. And human beings are like that too. We would be lived perfectly by wisdom if we had enough trust and faith in wisdom, right? Trust and faith that this is a deeper intelligence that's at core. Someone says, why does ego have such a negative connotation? It depends on if you talk about the danger of being only wedded to personal ideas and thoughts. People become serious and dry not feeling full. They become arrogant, they become self-righteous, they compare, they do better and worse all the time. So from that perspective, ego is a curse when that's all we live from. From a deeper perspective, it's just a natural. So sometimes it would say it's a curse, and sometimes he'd say, oh, it's just a natural part of being a human being. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just our personal thinking. We're always going to have personal thinking. Ego isn't the problem. It only becomes a problem when we don't experience the connection to wisdom. So we get out of balance. We get uptight. We get heady. We get righteous. I get impatient. It's just all these qualities, desire and need and want and have to and should. And no wonder people call this space within the freedom space. It's not being influenced by that thinking, even when it shows up. The power of presence.
Anyone want to ask a question, just in case, just before?
Or anything that you're hearing or would like to hear more about?
I have a question if I could.
Yeah, of course, please.
I guess, so when I say I struggle, I guess I know why I struggle, because I'm thinking, but I feel like I don't have that connection. And I guess I'm telling myself lately that it will find me if I just wait on it. I guess I feel like I have greater peace of mind, but as far as like feeling like love and richness, I feel very, not depressed. I just feel a lack of being touched by much.
So you said at times you have feeling some of these deeper feelings.
I do. Yeah, I do. But I've had a very busy mind for so long, and that is quieting down a lot.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, you're on the right path. It took a long time for me, Leslie, and I've talked with Harry about this. We kept trying to think our way through life by habit. Yes. And because we hadn't grown up in a culture where we are introduced to our true nature and to wisdom from the get-go. Right? So we're all in the same boat, and we're beginning to more and more recognize when we're caught up. And just very simply, it's so ordinary. As Sid sometimes used the metaphor of just wiping away the thoughts of yesterday, like turning on the windshield wiper on your car when it's raining. It doesn't seem like a whole lot is happening, but you do begin to have a little more clarity, a little more calm. These deeper feelings start revealing themselves. And as far as Sid was concerned, he doesn't care if anybody has an intellectual realization of connection to the whole. He said, if your mind ever gets quiet and there's a nice feeling, that's it. Don't complicate it. Don't make it into something bigger. That's you dropping into this space. And you get more familiar with that space and those feelings. And it's easier to recognize when you're away from it, when you get away from home and get a little lost, as Sid would say, and then you turn around and you know then how to come back home again. And it doesn't seem for a while like a whole lot is happening until gradually you take a look at how you are this year as opposed to last year, and you go, wow, overall, I'm doing a little better here. Overall, I'm a little more resilient. It's easier for other people to see it. It's easier for other people to see. I'm working with a woman who's been anxious her whole life, and every time she'd feel anxiety, she'd run up into her head and do even more thinking. And now her husband is saying, oh my gosh, you're really changing. And she goes, really? What do you mean? And it would be hard to see it. But as George Pransky would say, you're on a learning curve, Leslie. And if you're on the learning curve, don't worry about it. Wisdom now has you. And you'll keep seeing it over and over again. It won't seem like a whole lot's happening. You just recognize tension, realize it's thought, fall out of it, go about your day, live an ordinary life. And before you know it, there's more of these deeper feelings. And then you discover more and more secrets revealed by wisdom. Like if you give a deeper feeling away, you tend to get more and more of them. So give it away to the neighbor's dog, give it away to your backyard, give it away to your sunglasses, give it away to the people you see, and you start bringing that warmth and friendliness into the world. And you are literally changing the consciousness of the world. You are bringing more love and understanding into the world. Leslie Fry, walking around, helping to create a better world, right? That's what Sid called when your level comes up and then you give it away. I know at the beginning, I used to love, Harry, I don't know about you, in the very beginning of Sid's talk, he often gave a short little summary of everything he knew. And he'd say, well, I don't really know what to say, other than it's all thought. Live in the now. It's a feeling. Give it away.
And it's,
Other than that, I don't really know what to say.
oh, he did say something else, and it's spiritual.
Yeah,
He always started with that, and it's spiritual.
yeah,
And then he worked his way up.
yeah.
It didn't start at its ego. He sometimes did, but mostly it's about your spiritual identity. When you acknowledge that within yourself, he doesn't have anything more to teach you because you're now walking in the world that Dicken is describing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Harry. It's that was his whole message was we're more than we think we are. We're already always, whether we know it or not, connected to this spiritual dimension of life, this formless life energy. It's already true.
And psychologically, Dicken, all he ever talked about, he didn't talk much about it until you guys came. All he talked about is watch your beliefs. Just watch your beliefs. And Leslie, watch your beliefs. The world that Dicken described who you are, that's actually, you know about positive feelings. Everybody knows about positive feelings. How do they feel? A lot better than negative feelings. There's your guide.
I'd like to read you all what is currently my favorite quote of Sid's, because I think it's a summary not only of Sid's teaching, but of all true spiritual teaching. All true spiritual teaching points toward the oneness, forgiveness, love, understanding, compassion. And almost every talk he'd say, you have to go beyond the words. You have to don't listen to my words. go beyond beliefs, go beyond concepts. So in this particular talk, you have to go beyond all concepts. Like when I first heard that, I'm looking out my window and I go, there's a tree in front of me. Do I see that as it is, or do I see my idea of a tree? Do I really see it without concepts? Do I see my wife when she walks in the room as if it's the first time I've ever seen this being? Or do I see her through the lens of my concepts? You have to go beyond all concepts. Spiritual concepts are as binding for people as psychological concepts, because they're concepts, they're a limitation. You have to go beyond all concepts, and you'll find it in the stillness of your mind, in the quiet chambers of your mind, when you go from the known, or what you think you know, to the unknown, from the physical to the spiritual. When you hear beyond the word, an inner light goes on, and it brings out inner knowledge and wisdom. Spiritual intelligence before the contamination of human thought. Be grateful for the spiritual wisdom you have found that has changed your life, because it's been doing it our whole life, whether we knew it or not. And then he says, it's a feeling. You are looking for a feeling. Don't listen to the words. Look for a feeling. So he would say, come back to simplicity. We live in the world of thought. The good news is we can wake up to the fact that we think up tension, stress, and upset. That was his very first insight. All of my insecurity and unhappiness is just thought in the moment. Boom. It's an illusion. It's a temporary creation. If I don't hold it, it doesn't exist. And he said it was like an explosion going off in his being. For 3 days and 3 nights, he didn't sleep because he realized how the mind works. How the mind works. And then he had his enlightenment experience, and he said, then I realized the very nature of the mind, which is God, which is one. And in that instant of realization, I knew the principles. They were, he said, I didn't discover them, they were revealed to me. So that inner light. And he said, when he touched that space so far beyond his intellect, the feeling was so beautiful and so deep. And so when he came back, he knew that that was within every single one of us. And he said, you're a thought away from the space of the unknown, the spiritual, beyond the word, thought away from the now, thought away from pure listening, always in every moment. When I was working with a woman who was paranoid schizophrenic and was hallucinating, and I'd say, could you just listen to me for a minute? And she'd go, okay. Thought away, wide open to new and fresh. And the deeper we understand this, the more we rest in being, just being ourself, big S. And it's quiet and it's a feeling.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
I just want to share something that came to mind. That's, when Leslie asked her question, and like the thing is that we give meaning to our thinking when we feel bad, and this is what gets us worse, and like
No.
what should I do about that? How can I fix it? And this is what leads us away from our true essence, our space within. The more we go trying to fix that, the less we're in touch with who we truly are, our wisdom. And like I feel that mostly every day, but once I see that I'm having a bad thinking, I come back quicker to my natural state,
Yes.
to my wisdom.
Yeah.
So there is nothing wrong with feeling bad or feeling depressed sometimes, as long as you know that it's only your thinking at that moment. It's your experience at that moment, and it's going to pass. It's not constant.
Yeah.
It's fluid. So I just wanted to put to share this, and I think someone got a question. Do you still have time, Dicken, to go on? Or
No, I do.
thank you. That's so generous from you. So Ikra, could you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Dicken. I have watched several of your webinars, and it is truly amazing to have see you live. And it's that energy is a different kind of energy. For me, I can feel it, I can sense it. So thank you very much for coming here. And I just wanted to share all you have been saying. I've been a living laboratory of that since last few months. So I came across to this understanding. Just stumbled upon them, and I was looking I'm doing a psychology degree and I'm a social worker by profession, so I was just looking for some well-being initiatives and things to share with my clients. So when I came across this and I started to because they say it's such a because it's a true, it's true, it's truth, it just lands on you differently, and I think I started living that way. And the more my noisy thoughtful mind settled down, so my aim was to work on my psychology or my client psychology. Spirituality was never in the picture. That was never my aim, or that was beyond. I mean, I never thought about it. Actually, I am born Muslim, but interestingly, what happened as a byproduct, completely unexpected, I never expected it or thought about it. As my noisy mind and thoughts settle down, I think how I can see is when the dirt and contamination settled down, all it was left was purity, and my connection with Allah strengthened. And my outer appearance, my demeanor, everything has changed. And people ask me, what thought came to your mind? What happened to you? And I laugh within myself that it's so paradoxical. It's not what more thoughts came, it's less thoughts. Is no thought, less thought. And all rest was taken care of itself, just effortlessly, completely effortlessly. So my connection with the higher power, the wisdom of the universe or Allah, I wasn't working on that, but so now I can see how psychology and spirituality are so linked. And I've been Umar's student, and Umar has been very patient. In the beginning, I tried to intellectualize it, and at the end, I think I gave up. I said, you know what? It's like Umar explains, it's like gravity. Even I try to rationalize it, admit it or not, it's still there. But what it has done for myself, it's just magical, completely magical. So that's just saying that whatever you're saying is, I can so much resonate with that. My question to you is, you talk a lot about being non-judgment and living and seeing without the contamination of our thoughts and beliefs, and you talk a lot about love, and I think we need it more than ever. Now my question to you is, some days I feel everyone on this face of earth is just divine creation. I can see the psychological innocence, and I can feel love, and I'm not judging anybody. But then I do have days when I see people doing it, like, caught up in their own thinking and doing the things which previously I would have reacted to that, but now I can see my mind and I'm saying, I'm getting caught up into my negative thinking. But I struggle to have that, love. And I want to live in that state. And you talk a lot about presence. So if you just talk a bit more about that, that would be really great. But thank you so much. I'm so glad I've been able to speak with you.
You're just a delight. I can see you just bubbling with, I like the word enthusiasm. You're enthusiastic about life. Enthusiastic comes from the word theos. And in Latin means to be filled with spirit or God. So true enthusiasm. I see this all over the world when people's conditioned thinking falls away. You see this entheost, right? Being filled with spirit. All the mystics talk about emptying and then infilling and then generosity of spirit, giving away in love and service. Right? That's at the very essence of what it is to be human, is the capacity to empty of judgments and thoughts that burden and label and separate. We can be empty of that thinking. That's the good news. And then there's this natural infilling, right? At one point, Sid was living in Hawaii and he'd talk about emptying and then filling with aloha, filling with the aloha spirit, the aloha feeling, the divine spirit feeling, the feeling of true presence that's not personal. It's the presence of God is the feeling of infilling that then we are capable of extending into the universe and bringing in terms of love and kindness and gratitude and compassion, that moves us. Those feelings, Sid says, if you don't know what to do, when you find that deeper feeling, you'll be moved by the wisdom of that feeling. Wisdom is always found in a positive feeling, Sid would say. So if I don't know what to do, I know I'm trying to think my way through it, because when I fall out of that thinking that creates my ambivalence and confusion and uncertainty. Now, I want to answer one part of your question specifically. How do I be loving when I don't feel loving? Right? I was very fortunate when I learned this. My kids had not hit teen years yet. Well, my daughter was just was 13 and my son was 8. And all the time I'd get upset with them. And then for the first time, I started seeing that as my problem or my thinking. It had nothing to do with them. And I would wait just a little bit. And as like Omar says, if you leave it alone, it passes on its own. I'd get over it. When I felt better, I became a much better, different parent. So if you ask my kids, was your father loving? And they'd say, yeah, when he was in a good feeling, he would be really loving. But then they would add, I know after, he can be really upset with us, but he doesn't act on it. That's really loving. So that's the beauty of beginning to understand, is that we become more responsible for what we're bringing into the world. And even when we feel really horrible, we can recognize that. And that's all kinds of compassion that allows us to continue to be kind-hearted even through our low moods. That's good news. You know, even in the midst of our low moods, we're a thought away from being open so that we have enough common sense that we don't make things worse.
Can I say something here? I just like,
Yeah,
in the Muslim, being exposed for the first time to the Muslim wisdom and teachings, what have I learned? It's an important question, because I'm not just here to teach or to bring new expression, but what have I learned from the teachings of Allah, the teachings of Muhammad, that has imprinted my life? It directly answers what you talked about. The word that I have seen that is extremely powerful in the Muslim religion is detachment, unattached to any image, any situation, no matter what. And even though I had heard that from Sid in the way that Dicken or I heard, I never heard it as clean as I saw it in the Muslim faith. And I saw it in this story of Rumi. We love Rumi in this room, and Omar brought it. And there was a story of Rumi where he was revered by everybody, but he knew he didn't have the answer. That even though everybody thought he had the answer, he didn't feel it. And then Shams, who is basically Sid, you know, except Shams, came into his life. And at a certain point, he said to him, I want you to go to the pub and get 2 bottles of wine. And he went, oh, gee, this in our religion, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. And my image, you know, my image is going to be destroyed. And so he went, because he had so much faith in what Shams said to him, he did it. And he went into that world, and the first thing, Dicken, that he experienced was this incredibly drunk man who was unbelievably wise and compassionate. He had such a good time. He had never talked to people who were poor, and so, because he was rich and all that type of stuff. And then he bought the 2 bottles of wine, and the gossip went all over the community and said, oh, he's totally lost. And then he's listening to Shams and all this stuff. And he came back, and Sham took the 2 bottles of wine, broke him, and said, I see you've got the lesson. The unattachment that helped me to see, I am attached to my thoughts and my images of what I see. And when I became more detached, honestly, I found what Dicken is talking about, freedom. I didn't have that until I learned that from Omar and from the faith that you have.
beautiful.
It's right there. And it's one of the best teachings of being a Muslim. You cannot be attached because it's a spiritual reality.
I love this quote that I've read. I forgot who wrote it, but it says, attached to nothing, connected to everything. And this is actually how I see this understanding is all about.
Yeah, it is.
And
That's beautiful.
yeah, saying this story, Harry, you remind me of a quote by Rumi. And I think maybe he said this after having this experience. So it goes, forget safety, live where you fear to live. Be notorious, destroy your reputation. And the way I see it, like, it sounds like, you know, aggressive and bad, but for me, it means that to not really get attached to your ego, to your self-image ego. And because the less attached we are to our self-image, the more, you know, we are in that space of oneness, you know, the state of humbleness, as we say in Islam. And the more we are connected to source, the infinite intelligence behind life. And coming from that place is, you know, the best and purest place we could ever come from. Dicken, I'm aware of the time. We have Joe who's like he's raising his digital hand. Do you have time for one more question? Is that okay with you?
I wasn't sure how long this would go. I set aside an hour and a half, so I got another 10 minutes I had planned on. So
Then you're going to charge us double, I guess, after that.
yeah,
You know, Harry get paid with spiritual currency. That's how we we started talking together. So yeah, Joe, could you unmute yourself? And
yeah, I was going to say thank you. I mean, it's beautiful what you said, but it just came to me that how kind of the form of reality is just like the art gallery of God, really, and it's there to be admired and seen as unique expression. And it's kind of the difference of going to an art gallery and just seeing the pictures and seeing the beauty and expression in them, or going as a critic and then saying, oh, he used this technique, or this painting's better than that painting. And that's when you lose the feeling. And so it's just that, isn't it? It's seeing that actually every person, everything is a beauty and an expression in its own right.
no.
But also you kind of how we get caught up in words as well, and even the word ego, how we get caught up in it. And really, it's just a metaphor to point again to like when we're kind of turning away from that beauty and getting stuck in our computer and that. And also interesting how you kind of see films differently. It just kind of made me think of Space 2001 Odyssey, when the computer takes over. And it's almost that, isn't it? The ego saying that the computer's taken over. And it's so yeah, so thank you. It's kind of and that's just a difference when you kind of admire the beauty on everything to kind of judging it. And it's kind of like, say, it's kind of an arrogance, isn't it? Saying we know more than God, that we know more than the beauty of God, when actually God created this beauty and that's its expression. Thank you. Yeah.
As our understanding deepens or our level of consciousness goes up, we see life differently. So at lower levels, we say, well, I have bad thinking, I have negative thinking, I got to get rid of it, it's contaminated. That's at one level. And it's helpful then for people to see that they don't have to listen to and act on that thinking. It's very helpful, very powerful. At a higher level, then Sid would start saying every thought is neutral. No thought can hurt you. It's just energy condensed. And then at a higher level, every thought is just God dancing. It's sacred, it's beautiful, right? It just depends on where you're looking at it from. It's the same with things like free will, and people get so hung up on free will. Well, at a lower level, to realize you have a choice whether you hold on to a thought or let it go is one of the most freeing things people can realize. And they go, I do have a choice. Because at lower levels of consciousness, you just feel like I'm a victim of the world that makes me feel bad and that makes me feel good, and I have no choice. And then you go, oh, I do have choice. I'm living in the world of thought. And then at a higher level, Sid would say, there is no free will. It's only God's will. It's an illusion that we have free will. But again, these are just words. So he said, don't worry about any of this. Don't worry about the words. You keep stepping beyond the thinking you're caught up in or attached to into a space of non-attachment. So the sky has been used as a spiritual metaphor for our natural state of consciousness. The sky doesn't attach to anything flying through it, and it allows all thoughts and feelings metaphorically to come and go as they are. Enormous freedom, right? So then there's this state of non-attachment, and then you go beyond the clouds of our personal thinking into the blue sky of non-attached space within presence, awareness, and then the light. That's what Sid says. You hear beyond the word, and inner light goes on. Sid says if we have the courage to take one little step beyond our precious thought system, something beautiful must come into our being. That's that That's why light has been used, that we lighten up. We see the light. We see more clearly. We can find our way in the dark. They're just metaphors, but my God, are they beautiful. Go to the light, lighten up, see the light, be a light unto the world. Beautiful, beautiful. Pointers. Pointers. Right? Then, as you said, Joe, then all words become just metaphoric pointers. Even ego is just a pointer toward what's true.
To support that, Sid said, whatever you think ego is, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And maybe we should, this seems like a good place here. Not only that it's a long time for us all, and
Perfect.
yeah, and
Perfect. Yeah.
Omar, why don't you wind it up for our first season? And thank you, Omar, and of course, thank you, Dicken, for coming to our final show of the first season. Deeply appreciated.
Oh, Harry, you're welcome, man. Omar, Harry, thank you, thank you. It was an honor to be here for your last show of the season. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to season 2 and what wisdom brings along in that season.
Yeah. Hopefully we will have you in season 2 as well. Dicken, thank you very much for accepting our invite and being here.
Horia, when you were talking, I suddenly realized we want to do more panel shows next season with different people from different countries, from Muslim. Can you contact me and we could chit chat a little bit about that?
Yes,
I
great.
will,
I would love to. Yes.
Okay.
I will hook you up with Ikra, Harry.
Okay.
Yes, my name is Ikra. Sorry, Harry, it's my daughter's name showing up. Uma knows me very well. He's my teacher.
Yeah, I just, all of a sudden when you were talking, I realized there's all, especially Dicken, women, you know, yeah, but beautiful, beautiful, wise women. And so anyway, we'll talk about that because I have some ideas for panel shows, and I just suddenly realized that is a good way to share. So,
Okay.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
Finish it off, Omar. Sorry, cut you off again. Yeah.
Rumi said it beautifully. Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. And I would love to end it on this note, that we all trying our best to convey this understanding with people, and we're using metaphors, not the exact words, but we're just pointing at something that doesn't have right words. And hopefully we, people would see what we're putting at. And so, thank you, Dicken, for accepting our invite today. This is the last show of the season, so it's been amazing finale.
Couldn't wait to be back couldn't wait to be back in the room with you again, Omar. It's been too long.
It would be my pleasure. I always like your company, and we've met and we talked before. And thank you, Harry, for this amazing year together and what we did, and for our participants and people who contributed to make this show better and better. Thank you all for your support and for your love and for just, sharing this understanding and just doing what you do. So see you next season.
How do you say goodbye, Omar, in your language?
Assalamu alaikum. I can just say assalamu alaikum.
Okay.
Masalama.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dicken. That was a treat.